Hi, welcome to this Facebook Live. I got on a minute earlier, at least I think it's a minute earlier, to make sure that I've gotten on. So while we wait a couple seconds, um, tell me where you're from. Love to hear from you. It's always fun to see who else is on with us. And I going to focus on today recognizing that your closest relationships, not just the people you meet on the street or in church, but your closest relationships, the people that you spend the most time on, are they healthy or are they unhealthy relationships? And this week, Rebuild After Divorce opens its doors for registration. And so many times, people who are separated and divorced, if not all the time, have found themselves in unhealthy relationships. So that's another reason why we're focusing on this topic today. But I hope you've had a good 4th of July weekend, and some of you might still be part of your weekend. I know today my son had to go back to work, but I had a very nice weekend. Oh, hi, Betty from Poplar Bluff, Missouri. Betty, I hope you had a nice weekend. Mine was very quiet, which I needed because my mother passed away 2 weeks ago, and we had her celebration service for her life last weekend. So I needed a low key weekend. I needed some time, even if it was brief, in my garden. However, have any of you had this happen where you have a couple days really low key, peaceful, and then the next morning you wake up and everything seems to explode and break apart? Well, that's what happened this morning to me. Had a lovely weekend when found out the registration, which opened up for Rebuild, we're having problems with the link. So we'll talk more about that later. But right now, I want to focus on how do you recognize whether your closest relationships, the people you spend the most time with, how do we know if they're healthy or unhealthy? So I challenge you to think about this. Now, when we're looking at our relationships, this is not about being judgmental of other people. This is not about being critical of others. This is about protecting your time, your resources, your energy, so that you're spending the most time with those who feed into you, are life giving, not life draining. Hi, Deb. So good to see you. Yeah, I have lots of good memories, have lots of wonderful stories about my mom. And that's one of the places I learned what a healthy and unhealthy relationship was from my mother growing up. So, anyhow, King Solomon, the wisdom of scripture in Proverbs 13 tells us walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and you'll get into trouble. So, research has validated what already God knew, and that is when we walk with the wise, we become wise. Because research out in Northwestern University showed that our brains naturally, effortlessly, in fact, we might not even be aware of it, sync with the people we're around with the most. They align. So we're shaped by the people we spend time with. We become like them. So if you want to improve the quality of your life, look at your relationships. And the people, again, who are in your innermost circle, are they healthy relationships or not? So what am I talking about here? Healthy relationships are the people who have learned over time. They might have been hurt, but they've become self-aware. They've learned uh, what they're feeling, their emotions, and they process them, be it anger or shame or grief, in healthy ways. Unhealthy people, you'll hear this a lot, are hurting people, but they hurt others. And that's because they're not willing to take the time and energy to be self aware. They're not willing to do the hard work, to heal, to change, to grow. Um, and so those are the people we want to distance ourselves from, not have in our closest circle of friendships. Now, here's something we get mixed up a lot. How many people, Betty asked, do you need for an inner circle? I'd say even if you only have one healthy person who accepts you as you are, who is self-aware, is willing to communicate when you have, disagreements. You only need one. And really, in that innermost circle, maybe two, three, four at the most, because these are the people you're investing your time and resources in. These are the people you're praying with and for. These are the people that you're sharing life with. So we can't have a whole lot of people in our inner circle. So at least one person. And if that's all you have, what a gift that is. But I want to say both healthy and unhealthy relationships are painful. So even that one person that you might have in your innermost circle, you might have times where things are painful. Now, I'm not talking consistently painful, but that's because even in the most healthy relationships, they can be painful because at times iron sharpens irons, and that iron sharpens iron, and that's not always comfortable. That hurts at times. The truth hurts when these people help us to see who we are, but at the same time accept us for who we are. Um, the pain of unhealthy, these people are critical, do not accept who God created us to be, want us to become something different, and in fact, want to destroy the very person God created us to be. Um, so, both painful, if you think, oh, if this relationship is painful, it can't be healthy, that's not necessarily true. You need to look at these things. So, a healthy person is willing to be self-aware, to look at their emotions. So let's contrast them. First of all, and these are red flags in your closest relationships, unhealthy people usually blame others. I think we learned this on the playground when we were little kids. You always heard somebody say, well, wasn't my fault. She did, or he did, or he said. We put the blame on others. Now, we all like to make ourselves look good. We all like to tidy our relationships up. I know when I get company, I'm not going to leave my house looking pretty unkempt, all kinds of things sitting out. I'm going to stuff things in closets and shut the doors on those. So we all have a tendency to do that. But unhealthy people consistently, over time, blame others. A healthy person's going to take responsibility and say something like, hey, I made a poor choice there. Or just recently, I had to say, you know what? I assumed this was what was going on, but my assumption was incorrect. So they own it, they take responsibility, and they're willing to admit, I made a mistake. I know my son often uses the phrase, my bad. Mom, that was my bad. That's the way of accepting responsibility for him. Okay, unhealthy people, another trait, they prefer to stay the same. They don't want to change. They don't see any need for change. And they realize, you know what? Change is hard work because you might have to learn new skills, you have to create new habits, and that takes focus over time. We don't just change overnight or transform overnight. So, unhealthy people, they don't want to do that hard work, and it is hard work. But healthy people are willing to be intentional, willing to invest in learning whatever it is they need to learn, to make changes, and to recognize, oh, I got to retweak this and realign. I'm getting off path again. The third trait is red flag is unhealthy people, like healthy people. We all have sin and junk in our lives. That's just part of being human. None of us are perfect. We all fall short of the glory of God. The difference is, another trait is unhealthy people will make excuses for it. It's very similar to blaming other people. For instance, more than once, I have a tendency of running late. I wait till the last minute. I try to get everything done. Then I get out the door late. And if I hit traffic or a lot of red lights, I'm late. But rather than owning it, I'll make excuses like, oh, there was an accident or I ran into construction. Now, I know that's not true, but I'm making excuses for my behavior. Well, if I'm doing that repeatedly, if I'm not looking at myself and saying, excuse me, I need to own that and just say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm late. I left late, and maybe I did hit construction, and that made me even later. But we're willing to be honest. We're willing to be vulnerable in our closest relationships. We're willing to show our more tender side. Okay, the next trait is unhealthy people stay stuck in self-pity when difficult things happen, when there's a tremendous loss. Now, we all short-term sort of get stuck short-term. We lose our job, or we've lost somebody important in our life, or there was a dream that has become shattered. Well, unhealthy people tend to stay stuck in that self-pity. Uh, Woe is me. It's me, myself, and I. So self-pity, again, all of us have little pity parties at times, but we do not stay stuck there. We do not dwell there. At some point, we're willing to say, you know, find somebody to talk to, a counselor, a close friend, and say, hey, I'm hurting right now. I just want to focus on myself. And I know this is not the healthiest place, but short term, I need to look at that pain. I need to look at that grief. I need to look at that sadness, and I own it, but I don't want to stay there forever. So I'm going to own those feelings. Again, guilt, shame, pain, frustration, whatever they are, sadness. I'm willing to look at them rather than dwell on them week after week, month after month, year after year. I don't want to stay there forever. The next thing is unhealthy people act out their feelings. And you not only are not aware of them, but we've all had these interactions where somebody's angry, but they say they're not angry. They just don't talk to you. And when you ask them, what did I do wrong or what's wrong? They'll say nothing. Or if they don't give you the silent treatment, they'll just withhold their time or attention. So they not only stay stuck in pity, but they don't look at those emotions and they don't express them constructively. So, what do you do with that sadness? Well, short term, you just cooperate with it. You're not going to have energy. You're not going to feel like doing anything. And that's okay. But we don't act out our feelings uh, with others. If we're angry, anger is a valid feeling, but we don't dump those angry feelings on others. We find constructive ways, people to talk to, ways of working through them, praying and asking God, help me here. I'm really struggling. I can see myself getting bitter. I can see myself just holding on to that grudge and getting resentful. God, help me. Help me get to that place where I can let go of this. I can surrender it. I'm going to own it. This person hurt me, but I'm going to let go of it. And then the sixth thing we want to look at, the trait, is unhealthy people avoid pain at all costs. Anything that's painful, they're just going to back away from it. And that goes with relationships. We already said even the most positive, healthy relationships can be painful. Well, if someone's not healthy, they're just going to back away from it. They hurt me, I'm out of here. Whereas healthy people are willing to understand, you know what? Pain is part of life. Sometimes relationships take a lot of work, even the best ones, and we got to hang in there. Now, I want to say, if consistently somebody is hurting you, consistently critical of who God created you to be, consistently wanting you to be somebody you're not, then stop. That is not healthy. But healthy people say, okay, life is tough. At times I suffer. And you know what? There isn't always an immediate solution. I have to work through that pain. I have to work through that suffering. I got to get people to help me. And it's those in our closest circle we want to turn to and say, help me here. Don't let me get caught in the victim mindset of poor me. Yeah, at times people might hurt us, but we understand life is painful. And we understand that if we do the hard work of looking at our feelings, owning them, working through them in positive ways, we are going to go from that point of reeling to resilience, that point of being broken and hurt deeply to wholeness. But it's a process. So, looking back, unhealthy people blame others, they make excuses, they won't own up and take responsibility for their behavior, they'll stay stuck in pity, and they'll avoid pain at all costs rather than being willing to face it. Now, again, why am I even talking about this? Why am I even asking you right now to look at your closest relationships and evaluate over time? Is this a healthy one? Have we hit some bad spots? Have we been able to communicate and work through it? If so, that's a very good thing. But it impacts our stress level, because unhealthy relationships, you're always dealing with the ups and downs, the drama, the pain, the hurt. You recover and only to be back there. And healthy relationships help you become more and more of the person God wants you to be. So, as I said earlier, Solomon said, walk with the wise, spend time with the wise, and you're going to be wise. So, are you spending the most time and resources on people you want to be like? Because as we mentioned, we align with that. They shape who we're going to be in a year from now. And if you don't like who they are, if they're always making poor choices, if they're always blaming others, making excuses, staying stuck in self-pity, and don't want to grow, is that the person you want in your closest circle of relationships? I don't think so. And so you might be asking, well, okay, there's one person, maybe you're dating them, uh, maybe that's somebody you've allowed in your inner circle. What do I now do? Well, you slowly want to distance yourself and spend more time with that healthy person. And a lot of times it's just that slow distancing, always being respectful, always being kind. But again, guarding your time, your resources, stewarding them well, that's what's going to shape you into being the person you want down the road. So if you have any questions about healthy or unhealthy, go ahead, post them now. because this is something I challenge you to be very intentional about. And it's something you don't look at today and then ignore for the next year. You need times where you just step aside and look at a relationship and think, is this consistently a healthy one? Or is this consistently taking me where I don't want to be? Life draining, not life enhancing. You need to look at that and reflect what it is you need to do. Now, rebuild after divorce. This is one of the things we focus on, and this is for women who are separated and divorced. And we're very intentional about healthy attracts healthy. So we've been talking about looking at your relationships. Now let's put a twist on this and ask you, are you healthy? How are you in your relationships with others? Um, because again, healthy people attract healthy people. Wise people attract those who are wise. So rebuild after divorce, one of the things we look on at is being self-aware and looking at yourself, but also cultivating and nurturing and spending time on those relationships that will help you grow and become better. The other thing about rebuild after divorce is you focus on beginning anew. You focus on developing the skills, and we give you the tools of becoming resilient. Uh, these kinds of times after divorce are hard. And especially as Christian women, we can be blamed or we can be criticized and feel less than, feel like a second class citizen. So, this is a group of women who are where you are, who want to encourage you, who want to support you. And we're going to help you avoid some of the mistakes I know I made after my divorce so that not only could I rebuild, but I, could go in the direction of a positive, life giving, meaningful, purposeful life and which is so important. So, if that's something you might be interested, look at the details um, at georgiashafer.com/rebuild. And right now, type in rebuild dash open. And if you have problems, you can email me personally at georgia@georgiashafer.com. Betty has been in our rebuild, and in fact, Betty is an excellent co-worker. One week I do a teaching session and we do a sharing during that time also of encouraging each other. But we focus on one skill in the rebuilding process. We have a 5-step process. Betty is our co-leader. So the following week, so let's say this Tuesday is a session. It's not. Rebuild starts July 13th. This week, the cart is open and you can register. And only this week can you register for Rebuild after divorce. But we have, starting on July 13th, we have a teaching session and a sharing. And the following week, Betty does the implementation. Whatever we covered the week before, Betty dives deeper and helps you implement any obstacles. She helps you brainstorm, and the whole group goes through this. Betty noted in the comments it helps her stay grounded. It also, I would assume, Betty, it helps you stay focused and intentional to keep growing. And that's so important because we as Christians want to keep growing. I talked earlier about I got to spend some time in my garden this weekend, and I can tell you healthy plants are always growing. They need cut back. Sometimes they need pruned, or they might need fertilizer, but they're growing. Unhealthy plants are just going back. And I got to get rid of the weeds and all the things that are hindering growth. So that's a thing that Rebuild After Divorce helps to remove. In this case, we're talking about unhealthy relationships. And yes, as Betty just noted, we meet on Zoom, we meet in person. Uh, and the women are always that are attracted to this group are positive, encouraging women. And the reason is they want to be intentional. They want to move beyond where they are. They don't want to stay stuck in self-pity and poor me and look what he or she did to me. They want to keep growing. And they take the challenges to create the habits. So if you have any questions or comments, you can email me at georgia@georgiaschaefer.com. But if you're at all interested in rebuilding after divorce, or you know someone who's separated or is divorced and is really struggling to, this is something I never learned after my divorce. Nobody said, well, here's what a healthy Christian single again woman looks like in today's culture. I had no clue. I didn't even know where to begin. But in this group, we do have a clue. We do have the skills, and we will help you step through it, and we will not let you be alone. Because so many times people are isolated, but we're going to walk with you through this process so that you don't stay stuck, that these shattered dreams are not the end of your life, but that we help you put those pieces, whatever the pieces of your life are, back together in a positive way. What needs to go, you get rid of, and the rest you keep and create this new life for yourself, a new beginning. So thank you for joining me today on this Facebook Live about healthy relationships. And now I encourage you to take some time. Look at your closest relationship. And are they consistently life-giving, or are they consistently life-draining? And if so, how can you distance yourself or remove them, spend less time on them, so you can become the person you want to be? Thanks for joining.